All right. What's the difference between sip and swig? Sip and swig. Do you know? Well, some of my subscribers are a bit confused about that because in one of my latest videos, I drank some tea and I said I took a swig of tea. And I said swig means sip. Swig and sip basically mean the same thing. Well, I didn't really explain why I said that. And so I'm sorry about that. And let's look at some comments. You can see how confused some of these people are. Okay, so first question from Rohan. He says, is there a difference between a sip and a swig? Just a bit confused. Hey, great question, Rohan. That's my fault because I didn't explain it. Okay, so that's what I'm doing in this lesson. I want to amend my I want to amend my mistakes. Amend means to make right. Okay, so I made a mistake. I didn't teach you. Now I want to make amends. Make amends means to make things right. Okay, so the next question is from Morteza. Did I say that right, Morteza? Sometimes it's a bit confusing when I read my comments because sometimes I don't know if a name is a man or a woman. Right? I have no idea. So there have been times on my channel where I thought I was talking to a man, but I found out later that it was a female name. I thought it was a man's name. So if a person has a name that's not an English name, like Morteza, I have no idea if that's a man or a woman. No idea. Rohan too. Now Rohan I think is a man. It's not a common name. I think it's an English name, but it's not a common English name. So hopefully I'm not making any mistakes here. Let me know in the comments if I'm making mistakes. But be patient with me because I don't speak all the languages in the world. I'm just taking a stab at it. Taking a stab means just trying. Just take a stab. It means just try. Give it a shot. Hey, that's another idiom. Give it a shot. Take a stab. They just mean to try. Okay, so I'm just trying here. So bear with me. Bear with me. That's another idiom. Bear with me means be patient with me because I could make some mistakes here. So Morteza says, so I think guzzle and gulp down mean to swig and down means to chug, right? Yes. Down does mean to chug. They mean the same thing, right? So down, right? If I want to down this water or if I want to chug, it's basically the same meaning, right? I would go like this, bottoms up. Sometimes we say in English, bottoms up, right? That means you're going to drink the whole thing. You're going to chug. I think usually, most of the time, the word chug means to drink the whole thing. If you chug a beer or if you chug a bottle of water, you're going to, I think most of the time you're drinking the whole thing. To down definitely means the whole thing. Okay, so if I down this water, I'm going to drink all of it. If I chug this water, I'm probably going to drink all of it, but maybe not. That would be the only difference, I think, between down and chug. But the first part of the question, guzzle and gulp down mean to swig. Actually, I'm going to explain that. I don't think that's quite right. So I'm going to explain that, okay? And then another question here, Aaron says, hey, Mark, does swig mean a tiny amount or a large amount? I looked it up and it seems like it's the other meaning. He says the other meaning because I said it was a small amount, right? I said the word swig means to take a small amount into my mouth, a small amount of tea into my mouth, right? It's a swig. Well, he looked it up and found that it actually means to take a lot. He's asking that, right? So he says, can you explain? Does it have some other definition? Or does it mean something else in a certain context? Okay, so again, great question. Let's look at two more questions and then I will dive into my explanation. Okay, if you dive into something, it means you start or you go for it. You go for it. See, English is full of expressions and idioms, and that's why on my channel I spend a lot of time teaching different expressions, right? Like dive in. I'm going to dive into my explanation after these questions. Okay, so another question is from Afri, and Crawford. How to describe drinking milk from the bottle. Some people pour it into their mouth. Some put their mouth on the bottle, then getting it down. Some swig it. Okay, so I think this question is asking, does there need to be physical contact? Again, that's a great question. Okay, so, sometimes people drink something without physically touching the bottle. If I open this cap and I just pour it into my mouth, would it be good to use the word swig? Can I use the word sip? Again, great questions, right? Let's look at one more question from Amber. This is a great question. Okay, does swig mean a large and hurried swallow? Okay, does swig mean a large and hurried swallow, but sip means a small amount of a drink? Wow, great questions, guys. I really appreciate you asking questions, because then it lets me know what I failed to explain. So I thought about it for a while, and I think I have a good explanation. Okay, so thank you for your questions, guys. So the first thing I would like to say is that swig and sip can be used interchangeably in most situations. Right? In most situations, you can use either word. It's not like a big mistake if you use the wrong word. Like, for example, if I drink some tea, I could say I'm taking a sip of tea or a swig of tea. Now, if the tea is really hot, then I would probably say a sip. But if the tea is already cold, like in my video, one of the latest videos where I took a swig, actually my tea was already cold. That's why I used the word swig. Okay, so if it's cold, I would say maybe swig is a better word than sip, but you could also take a sip if something's cold, right? Like for water, yeah, you could take a sip of water, or I could take a swig of water. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to say is that they can be both used. Sometimes in English, you can choose whatever word. There are lots of words that you can choose from. So with this example, swig and sip, most of the time you can use them interchangeably. Okay, but there are 4 differences, I think. Okay, so a swig is more liquid than a sip. All right, so yes, so to answer Aaron's question, right, he's saying, why did I say a tiny amount when he went on Google probably and found that actually it's a large amount? Why did I say a tiny amount? Well, what I meant was I wasn't talking about the amount of liquid in my mouth. I think I did say take a small amount of liquid into my mouth. That was a mistake. What I meant was a small amount of liquid relative to the whole cup, to the whole mug of tea, right? So if I take a swig of tea, right, how much is it going to be? Is it going to be this much, or is it going to be this much, or how much? Well, it's going to be a small amount relative to this, right? Relative means like compared to, right? So this is a big mug. Look at that big mug, right? If I just take a swig, maybe it'll fill my whole mouth. So it's actually a lot in my mouth, but it's not a lot compared to the whole mug. Okay, so that's what I would say. A swig is more than a sip. If you just take a sip, then it really is, it's more likely to be just a small amount. Like if you take a sip, it's like just a little bit, right? Whereas a swig is probably more liquid. Okay, the second difference is that a swig is faster than a sip. Okay, usually. I think most of the time when people say swig, it's probably faster. That's why I talked about the temperature of the liquid. So if we're talking about tea, right? Tea is usually hot. If people drink tea when they first make the tea, it's hot. You can't drink it, right? So you have to sip it, right? But if the tea is already cold, then you can take a swig, right? You can swig it. Okay, so that's, I would say, another difference. Usually when we say swig, it's fast, or faster, at least faster, right? If I swig this water, I'm taking a fast gulp. So Amber is right about that. Okay, great question, Amber. A large and hurried swallow. Yes, it is a large and hurried swallow. But it's still small relative to the bottle, right? Like if I'm going, if I'm going running, let's say I'm going jogging and I stop for a swig of water, it's just going to be a short stop. I'm just going to swig it pretty quick and then just keep going, right? I'm not going to stop there and spend like 10 minutes drinking water. Oh, it's going to be short. Okay. Now, number 3 is that a swig is not continuous. Okay, so we usually don't use swig as a verb. Isn't that interesting? So that's a difference. Well, whereas with sip, we do use it very often as a continuous verb. Right? Let's say I have some tea. You could say, I'm sipping my tea. I'm sipping my tea. Right? The tea is hot and you just take a sip and then you take another sip. Right? Whereas we don't use that with swig. With swig, there is a larger time gap in between your swigs. Okay? So that's why I used the word swig in that video a few videos ago. Right? Because my whole video, I was talking and I wasn't drinking my tea, but then I said I'm going to stop and I'm going to have a swig of tea. I think that's why I used the word swig, because it was just a one-time thing. I think I only stopped once in the whole video. Okay, so there was a long gap in between my swigs. So when you say take a swig, you can't say I'm swigging my water. I'm swigging it. But you can say I'm sipping. So that's an important difference, right? If it's something ongoing, you're sipping it, and we don't really use that with the word swig. Okay, number 4, a sip requires physical contact, whereas a swig doesn't. Okay, isn't that interesting? Okay, so if I take a swig of this, does my mouth have to touch the rim of the bottle? Okay, this is called the rim. Okay, do my lips have to touch the rim if I take a swig? What about with a sip? Can I take a sip without touching? Okay, so I think that's another difference. Okay, when you take a sip, I think it always requires physical contact. Like if I take a sip, I just took a sip of water, right? But because a swig is more liquid, I think, and because a swig is not typically hot liquid, I think you could say I'm taking a swig by just pouring it into your mouth. I think, but most of the time, if you take a swig of something, there will be physical contact. But I think that maybe there doesn't need to be. That's my hunch. Okay, a hunch is your guess. That's your feeling. Your feeling. I have a hunch that if you stop and take a swig of water, it doesn't. Most of the time there will be physical contact, but it's possible that there won't be physical contact. Some people drink water without it touching their lips, right? How about you? Let me know down there. When you drink water, does your mouth physically make contact, or do you just sort of pour it into your mouth, right? I don't know. So I think those are 4 differences that I thought of. If I missed something, let me know down in the comments. These comments were great. Thank you guys for such great comments. I think I answered these questions. Let me just go back. Okay, so Amber said, does it mean a large amount and a hurried swallow? Yes, I would say it's a large amount in your mouth, but not a large amount relative to the bottle. Okay, Afri and Crawford said, about the physical contact. Okay, so I would say to sip, you always have to have physical contact, but to swig, you don't always have to, but most of the time there will be. Aaron said, does it mean a tiny amount or a large amount? Again, I would say it's relative. A sip probably just means a bit, right? The reason we use sip for a hot beverage is because you physically can't. If you take a gulp, let's say, if you fill your mouth with hot tea, you're gonna scald your tongue. You're gonna scald the roof of your mouth. Well, you're gonna scald the whole inside of your mouth. But you know that part on the top of your mouth? That's called the roof of your mouth. That's kind of very sensitive. It's just kind of a sensitive skin there. So you might scald the roof of your mouth. The roof, right? I don't know why that always gets scalded. But your tongue, I think your tongue is a little bit tougher. Tongue is kind of like a tough muscle. Is that even skin? Does your tongue have skin? I don't even know. Does a tongue have skin? Maybe it does have skin. I don't know. But I think it's easier to scald the roof of your mouth rather than in your tongue because your tongue is tougher. It can take a hotter amount of, or a hotter temperature of liquid. Okay, and so what was Mortez's question? Guzzle and gulp down mean to swig? It could mean that, I think. I think like if you're out jogging and you stop for a swig of water, you could drink half the bottle and you could still use the word swig. Heck, you could even drink the whole bottle and you could use the word swig. That's why I say these words are flexible. Most of the time you can use them interchangeably, and you can choose how you want to use these words. Like if you drink the whole bottle, yeah, it would be better to use the word guzzle or down or gulp down or something like that. But you could also use sip because you don't know what your intent. Maybe you intend to take a sip or a swig, but then you end up downing the whole thing. So sometimes we don't know what English isn't like you're not walking on a tightrope. Do you know what a tightrope is? Right? If you're walking on a tightrope, you can't make any mistakes. If you make a mistake, you die. You fall to your death. Speaking English isn't like that, so don't be afraid of making mistakes. Like I said, with a lot of these words, they're kind of flexible. You can choose, whatever you want to do. So I hope that answers your question, Rohan. Is there a difference between sip and swig? Yes, there is a difference if you want to get technical, but in most situations, there's not much of a difference. So you choose the word you want to use. Just enjoy English. Play around with it. Experiment. Ask questions like you guys are doing. Thank you for the great questions again. And hey, hope you guys are having a great day. Hope that helped you answer just this question a little bit. Hope it brought some clarity to your mind. Hope it enlightened you. It enlightened me. I've never thought about this before. You guys' questions made me think. I had never really thought about what's the difference between sip and swig. Well, you guys enlightened me. So thank you very much. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you over in the next episode of Mad English TV. Take care.